Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. With us every year to get you ready each week for fantasy football and get you ready for your fantasy football drafts, which should be probably starting up right now. You're probably in that area where your commissioner has reached out to you by now, and you're setting the draft up, and now you're starting to do all of your research. So we're going to help you out with your drafts. Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com is back with us for another season to break down everything you need to know about the fantasy football season, who you should take when, where, how, why you should wait, why you should do this, why you should do that. And he joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline with another fantasy football season upon us. Jeff, welcome back, man. How you been?
Welcome back. Good to be back. It's great. Ready for some football.
Absolutely. We're always ready for the football, but the fantasy football draft really kicks off the year. I mean, this is where you're watching some of these preseason games, and we'll start off with that. How much stock should a fantasy draft put into what they see in these games? You know, we see that guy, you're maybe watching somebody, and you're like, man, he's getting a lot of touches, or man, he's really looking good in these preseason games. Do you put any stock into what you see on draft night in these games?
Just a little. I mean, for the easy answer is none, but a little bit. If you see a guy out there playing and you see him in like game one and he's playing the third or fourth quarter, and all of a sudden the next game he's playing the first half, the coaches want to see him playing against higher and higher level talent. If that guy's getting more and more reps, he could be a guy that could be your second string guy that could become a spot starter. So, but on some teams that they're fighting for positions like the preferred wide receiver 2, or who's going to be the 3 or 4 wide receivers that Arizona uses, that's what you want to see, and see what those camp battles, how they're playing out.
All right, so this year, let's get into the top half of the draft, because obviously, if you know people listening out there, they know where they're picking 1 through 10 or 12 if you're in a 12-team league. Definitive number one pick, Jeff Pasquino. Who is it for you? Is there a definitive number one?
I don't think there's a definitive number one. I think all of them have blemishes. I think Alvin Kamara is probably close to it for me. Saquon Barkley is the other one to consider, along with Christian McCaffrey. Those are top 3 running backs right at the top. All are feature backs. McCaffrey, they're trying to reduce his workload. Who knows if they will? And it's questions if Cam's going to come back as strong as he did last year. Last year he was kind of banged up. Kamara is going to get challenged by one of my sleepers, Latavius Murray, who's going to be the second back in the goal line feature and vulture there. And Barkley is going to be on a disastrous team. So he got plenty of production last year because there was nobody else, but I think defenses are going to be focusing on him all year long.
Okay. A lot of people have been asking me, and I want to ask you, what are you doing with Ezekiel Elliott if you come to a draft and he's not signed yet?
I think he's still a first-rounder, but I move him past the first couple of wide receivers. I still think he's going to be there, but I would take him in round 1, but I would also want to get 2 more running backs before the end of round 5.
All right. Last year, David Johnson, he was a high pick, got hurt. He's on a team that's not very good. Is he top 5? Do you think he falls? What are you doing with David Johnson?
He's running back 4 or 5 of that 5 people we've already talked about. And the Cliff Kingsbury offense that they're putting in, the air offense in Arizona with Kyle Murray at quarterback, they're going to play in a lot of running gun, a lot of snaps, and Johnson's going to catch a lot of balls in the backfield. So in PPR leagues, he's definitely a top 5 running back.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Barkley, Elliott, Johnson, Kamara, McCaffrey, that's 5. Who is the 6th back if you're picking a guy in the first round? Because a lot of mock drafts that I see, Jeff, kind of get away from the running back after those 5 guys.
They do, and I think that's a smart move because there's 5 or 6 solid wide receivers plus Travis Kelce that's threatening for consideration in round 1. After that, you're in the not Duke Johnson, but you think after David Johnson, you got Nick Chubb, but he's going to get pushed in the second half with Kareem Hunt coming back. You have Connor, you have Mixon. I would pick Mixon there because he's got really not a lot of threat. I like Gio Bernard as a compliment. I think you're looking at Joe Mixon as a number one running back on a team that's going to give him the ball quite a bit.
All right. What about Le'Veon Bell? I mean, he's a guy that didn't play at all last year. He's going to the Jets, a team that hasn't won in a while. However, does he get back into that fantasy stardom? He was one of he was typically a high first-round pick.
I think he's more of a second rounder. I think that he's a solid talent, but he's been off for a year. He's on a new team. He's with the Jets. The team isn't going to be that great. Defenses are going to key on him. He is playing the Steelers once this later in the season as well. So I think he's a solid talent. He's a round 2 guy for me.
All right. A lot of the running backs. Melvin Gordon's another one. I mean, I don't know what that situation is. I mean, he was a first-round pick for a lot of people last year. I don't know what you do with him. What's your advice for their draft night, Melvin Gordon?
We have him somewhere in the 15 to 20 range of running backs after a guy like Damian Williams in Kansas City or Chris Carson in Seattle. Kerryon Johnson, David Cook are right at the Todd Gurley's another question, too, although they have treating him with kid gloves. But Gordon's in the holdout situation. So when he comes back, he's going to be thrust into action. They also have a banged-up Keenan Allen who's not practicing but just getting back in the mix. The Chargers need some offensive talent to get back on the field. I think Gordon's going to be back, and I think Zeke's going to be out there, but they both could miss week 1.
Yeah, and, last year Zeke missed, the first 4 weeks and then kind of came back and after suspension, and I guess people who drafted, but people were drafting him. I remember my draft last year. He slipped into, the 4th round a little bit because he missed 4 weeks.
Yeah, and that's sometimes you have to weigh that against your entire schedule. If you're playing a 12 or 13-week fantasy schedule, those 3 or 4 weeks are a third of your regular season. That can make and break your ability to get into your fantasy playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. If you have fantasy football draft questions for Jeff, you can text them to 609-403-0973. We'll periodically slip some of your questions in. If you have a draft coming up and you have a question for Jeff, 609-403-0973. I already see some questions coming in. So let's ask about, all right, Barkley, Elliott, Johnson, Kamara, McCaffrey. That's the 5. If you're drafting someone other than a running back, who is that next go-to guy?
DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver. I think he's the number 1 wide receiver cleared away in a tier by himself, and wide receivers are going to be more. Travis Kelce was pushing to be he's in a tier by himself as well, but he's dropped down a little bit now. Tyreek Hill has been reinstated, and he's a good to go. So I think you got Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams and Julio Jones pushing, and Michael Thomas pushing for that next top 5 wide receivers. Those are all solid round 1 picks, but DeAndre Hopkins in sort of a league of his own in that first spot.
Okay, now before we start to look at some more of these wide receivers, who is that first quarterback that you're thinking about, and where do you take your quarterback specifically? If you're going to take the best, let's say you want whoever your best guy, I'm assuming like Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or maybe Breeze, whoever's at the top of your QB list, where does that guy fit in?
Well, first I want to mention Breeze. I think you got to drop him way down. The Saints are more of a running team, and Breeze is really getting up to age. So Breeze is not even a top 12 guy. He's borderline for that. So get that out of your mind. I think, but Mahomes is your guy. Mahomes is the number 1 guy. The question is it worth taking a quarterback so early? You're going to have to think about that in round 3 even for some drafts, or round 4. Most drafts he's going by round 4. That's really picking him based on last year's performance and expecting a similar result this year. The quarterback is so deep this year. There's probably 18 to 20 guys that are solid fantasy options, and several of them have top 5, top 7 potential. So I think you're doing your disservice of getting a quarterback early. You want to load up on running back and wide receiver and maybe one of the top 3 tight ends in the first 7 or 8 rounds, and then move on to quarterback and tight end.
Okay, we will talk more about that. The quarterbacks, you said it's deep, 18 to 20 guys. There'll be some interesting conversations coming up on that. Look at these wide receivers. Would you take these guys? You said Hopkins. Devontae Adams, is he a first-round pick?
Yes, he is.
Julio Jones.
Yes.
Big year for him back?
I think so. I think a lot of people are underestimating the Falcons. The Falcons are going to be a very productive offensive team this year.
What about Odell Beckham in Cleveland? New offense. Not a lot of people like Baker Mayfield, but is Odell Beckham a first rounder?
He's the end of what we call tiers. So you draw a line after like certain talent level drops off. You've got Adams, Hill, Julio, Michael Thomas, Juju, and Odell Beckham. Those are your 6 guys right after Hopkins. After that, you're dropping down a tier. Not by a lot, but you're dropping off a little bit. So there's like a line after 7 wide receivers.
All right, 609-403-0973. Some more text messages for Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com. If you have a fantasy draft, you have a question for Jeff, send it into us now, 609-403-0973. Michael Thomas, you mentioned Breeze falls down. Does Thomas fall down because of it?
No, because he's really the only elite option that they have in the passing game, and he commands the targets, and he catches everything. So he's definitely worth a top 5 wide receiver spot.
All right. What about what are you doing with A.J. Green? A guy got hurt. We don't know how long he's going to miss. He got hurt a couple of weeks ago. He's typically, one of your you talk about tiers, one of your first or second tier guys.
Yeah, he's sliding way down our list into the wide receiver 3 category because we have Dr. Gene Bremo on our staff, and he looks at the video and analyzes things. Things are not adding up, and Cincinnati tends to kind of hide things from their press conferences. So we expect him to miss at least week 1, possibly 2 weeks, and the question mark, the tipping points wide is week 3.
What about Antonio Brown? I mean, we're seeing what's going on with him, the helmet, the feet, new offense, not a great team. He used to be a first-round pick. Where are you picking him now?
We definitely want to see him in some preseason, at least practice, so that he can get involved with Derek Carr and get some timing down, because not only is he holding out and having trouble getting on the field with the feet injury and the helmet, he's got to get timing down with Carr and get on the playbook. So we have a wide receiver 10, and if you can get him in the 3rd round, that's a great value.
All right, Antonio Brown, Raiders obviously hasn't played in the preseason yet. Another guy, it's interesting because in New England, we basically don't have a guy, but you have Brady out there. I'd like to get your thoughts on that whole on Brady and who he throws to out there. Is there, Josh Gordon is back. Last year people were excited about him when he got traded to New England. What do you think about the Brady-Josh Gordon thing this year?
I think Josh Gordon is going to be a solid talent, and I've seen him go as high as like round 5 or 6. I think round 6 or 7 is about the time you might want to consider him. We have him as a wide receiver 3 or 4 because we just don't know how long he's going to be out there. But assuming he is for the whole season, he's got to get in tune with the program there. But the Patriots love to run the ball. The overthought is that that they remember the Randy Moss years with Brady and the 50 touchdowns or the high number of touchdowns. It's not going to happen this year. Brady puts up a lot of pedestrian performances, and he's 42 years old. So I think Julian Edelman's the guy to have in PPR. He's going to be the main target. Brady's going to throw a lot of 20 yards or under passes. Josh Gordon's the guy that stretches the field, and he will take some shots. But I don't think he's worth a more than wide receiver 3 spot on my fantasy team.
Yeah, I want to go back to another running back that I didn't bring up here, and you didn't bring him up either, which I don't know if that's concerning or not. Todd Gurley, another guy, 20-plus touchdowns last year. What do I do with Todd Gurley in this year's draft?
Todd Gurley he's about running back 10 for us, and he's right there. They're handling him with kid gloves. They call it the veteran plan, where he's not getting much action. That's typical of preseason. They don't want to break their assets there. But Gurley's going to be – he was very productive last year. If he's healthy and ready to go, which has been the question, then he's solid. But he's probably going to be coming off the field some more, as they have that rookie now that they added. I've seen him shot up some around 8 or 9, which is Darrell Henderson. He's going to be your passing down, your 3rd down back. They want to work him in and try to ease up some of the load on Todd Gurley and balance it out more. So Todd Gurley's still a top 10 to 12 running back, but lower the expectations just a hair.
Yeah, it seems that, and I haven't seen him in the first round. I mean, are you still drafting him in the first round?
No, he's not a first round guy. He's a running back 10. I'll be clear.
Okay,
he's
running back.
He's
10.
number 10 at running back.
Wow,
but he's more of like a round 3 kind of guy.
Interesting. All right, you mentioned Juju Smith-Schuster. I see him a lot in second rounds of drafts. Do you think there's a possibility that he slips a little bit or has some issues with Antonio Brown not there?
Well, Ben Roethlisberger's been quarterback there for quite a while, and he was the number one passer last year in number of attempts and dropbacks, and he was the number 3 quarterback in fantasy last year, even with all the issues with Antonio Brown at the end of the year. There is some question that how would Juju handle the fact that there's no Antonio on the other side of the field, but the Steelers are going to keep throwing the ball, and that's what they do. Connor at running back really he fell off the cliff in the second half last year, and they picked up the offense to the passing game. Juju is a solid round 2 wide receiver with a top 5 upside.
We got a lot of text messages coming to Jeff. We will ask your questions. I'll give you one more chance to text in 609-403-0973. If you have questions for Jeff, we want to throw some of the interesting names out there and see what Jeff's doing with these guys come draft day, because these are the guys you're going to be thinking about. Tyreek Hill, you mentioned him in Kansas City. He's a big-time wide receiver there. They got a big-time quarterback. Where do you seeing Tyreek Hill going?
I think he's the end of round 1, beginning of round 2 kind of guy, and that's really got to be your strategy. If the first 5 running backs go off the board, you got to come back with 2 wide receivers, lock in 2 studs, and then try to pick up the slack in running backs the next couple rounds.
All right, you mentioned Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, those big-time tight ends. When is it okay to start to grab one of those guys if you're in like a PPR league that has to play a tight end?
If you're in a PPR league, Travis Kelce at the end of round 1 or beginning of round 2 is a consideration. So he's that good and he's that far up there in that offense. So Kelce's up there. The next 2 are Ertz and Kittle in San Francisco. I think Kittle does a little bit less with Garoppolo back, because he had really bad quarterbacks last year who just dumped it off to him all day long. But those are your top 3. And Ertz is probably going to come down a little bit because Goddard is going to go up a little bit. Billy's going to spread the ball around a ton. You won't see Ertz getting all those catches this year. Still get plenty, but those are your top 3 tight ends. Now, so I think you're going with Kelce, end of round 1, beginning of 2. And the other 2 tight ends are probably round 4 picks, round 3 or 4. And then it's a steep cliff for the next 3 or 4 rounds. Tight end value really picks up around 9 or 10, but you can get solid guys in the second half of your draft at tight end, even on the last round for a guy out in Oakland.
Yeah, that will answer the couple questions on the text board. Somebody asked your tight end rankings top tier, so there you heard that right there. This question is for Jeff that wants to know, 4th pick, who do you take if Zeke Elliott is still not signed?
4th pick, I go Hopkins because I want to minimize risk. I'm assuming that Barkley, McCaffrey, and Kamara are gone. I'll take Hopkins unless I'm in love with David Johnson in a PPR league. It's a tough call, but I think that at the end of round 2, the beginning of round 3, you can pick up Todd Gurley or some other solid running backs in that 2-3 turn.
All right, some quarterback questions coming in, so let's throw a couple in your lap. Is Patrick Mahomes your guy, number 1 guy?
He is the number 1 guy, but that's not my strategy. My strategy is to take my quarterbacks in rounds 9 through 12 and take 2 of them. You can get Lamar Jackson, you can get Jared Goff, you can get Matt Ryan down there, but Ben Roethlisberger is there. I mean, these are some Pro Bowl quarterbacks that are available in rounds 9 and beyond. And Lamar Jackson should not be slept on. The guy's going to run the ball a lot. His coach has always said he's going to run it over the number of carries he had last year. So you're looking for 10 or 12 carries a game, which is going to raise his production and lower his risk.
This guy wants to know if you are avoiding Andrew Luck in your drafts.
I moved him down just today, actually. We have concerns about him. We want to see him practicing more, but I moved him down from quarterback 3 down to quarterback 4. I think Aaron Rodgers I would take over Andrew Luck, and then comes to your Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz area.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. We'll fire a couple names. Now, let me ask you this. Are there a couple of guys right now that you're that have as those sleeper guys that you're saying, here's a couple of guys that if you're deeper in the draft, target these guys?
Pick a position or just go in general?
You have, just in general, do you have certain guys that you're really liking this year?
Oh, yeah. Well, Chris Carson is one running back that I think has got top 10 potential. Seattle's going to run the ball a lot, and he's getting a lot of work. So he can be had about running back 15, 20 in round 5. Round 4, round 5, that's a great pickup. I like Mark Ingram in Baltimore. Again, the Ravens are going to run a lot. Mark Ingram's still got plenty of tread. I think he's going to get a lot of work. Latavius Murray's a guy I'm collecting everywhere. I think he's about a round 8 guy, and he is going to have the Mark Ingram role with the Saints, and he's a very good goal line back. The Saints have supported 2 top 10 running backs in the past couple of years, and I think Murray can be that guy. And you can have him in like the 30th running back in your draft. Sleepers, is after that, it gets a little murky. You really want to get 3 or 4 guys in your top 30. And then after that, you can take a couple of shots. Dark sleepers like Ito Smith in Atlanta, I think he can push for that second running back role and goal line work. Alexander Madison is getting a lot of attention in Minnesota. He's one of the few true handcuffs that are out there for Dalvin Cook. And another running back that I'll put up back on the top of the list, Kerryon Johnson. We're thinking that he's going to get 3 down work in Detroit. The problem is it's Detroit. And they could be have problems in the fourth quarter. And I tend to, if I'm going to pick one player versus another, I'll pick a stronger offense for probably 4 quarters of work, because you never know if they're just going to bench your ground game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and there's some interesting, names that are in that 3-4 round. You mentioned Carson, Derrick Henry, Marlon Mack, Aaron Jones, the running back situation in Kansas City, Josh Jacobs with Oakland. I mean, these are all guys that I've been seeing going in third rounds of drafts. So any of those guys you like?
The guy that jumps out on my list for that you mentioned is Marlon Mack. I think that he's a feature back. He will get goal line work. Andrew doesn't run very much anymore, plus we don't know how healthy he is. He's definitely a solid pick in that running back 20 area, and he has virtually no competition for the carries and for the Colts.
What are you hearing on the running back situation in Chicago? Howard's out. Montgomery, a lot of people buzzing.
Yeah, Montgomery's buzzing a lot, and they're trying. They even came out and said today that they are going to reduce Tarek Cohen's involvement a little bit, but it's a committee. You've got those 2 guys plus Mike Davis. So plus they want to get Trubisky throwing the ball around to everybody. So they do like to run the ball, especially when the weather gets cold. I think all 3 guys could have value, but the buzz is on Montgomery, so he's going to be overvalued. Cohen's going to come down a little bit. I think the sleeper to take is Mike Davis.
All right. What about Phillip Lindsay? Had a big year last year. He's coming back off that injury.
I still like Lindsay, and I think he's a great catcher of passes out of that backfield. But the sleeper in Denver is Royce Freeman. They're saying that he fits that offense a lot better for a one-cut zone read running game, and he's looked good so far. So he's another solid dark horse, but the warning is it's Denver. So, again, if you're picking guys on teams that are questionable, just move them down a little bit. Try to focus on your top 10 to 15 offenses if you have one choice versus another.
Is Baker Mayfield a big fantasy quarterback this year?
He's going pretty high. He's actually going as a quarterback 6 or 7, which seems too early for me, especially with all the depth. I don't think that there's that big of a difference between the quarterback 6 and quarterback 17. So I think that's kind of a risk to go that much. Plus, Cleveland could run the ball more. They have Nick Chubb, and now they're going to have Kareem Hunt in the second half of the year.
All right, fantasy football drafts to get yourselves ready. Of course, if you missed any of this conversation, we'll have it up on our YouTube channel. You can go back and listen, and Jeff will be here all season long answering your fantasy football questions as all these drafts, whether you're in a 10-team, a 12-team, a PPR, a non-PPR, get yourself all prepared for the draft. And, of course, all you daily fantasy guys out there will have tips on that throughout the season as well. Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com, will be with us each week to break down and get you ready for each and every fantasy football week. All right, Jeff, it's good to have you back, pal.
Great to be back, and let's get ready for some games.
Absolutely. That's Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Another year of Jeff's insight helping you win your fantasy football league.